Welcome to our fourth Friday from the Archives presentation. I'm Penny Cliff, Education Specialist here at the Georgia Archives. Today, you will enjoy new search room resources by Georgia Archives Reference Manager, Allison Hudgins. Before working at the Georgia Archives, Allison worked at the Cobb County Public Library System and at Mercer University Special Collections while she was a student. Allison has a Master of Library and Information Science degree from Valdosta State University. Now, if you have friends or family who aren't able to view this webinar, they can still enjoy this presentation as it will be uploaded to the Georgia Archives YouTube channel. Welcome, Allison.
Hey there, everybody. I'm going to talk about two new search room resources that we have available on site at the Georgia Archives when you come and visit us in Morrow. The two resources I'm going to talk about today are HeinOnline, which is a legal resources database, and newspapers.com library edition. So let's get right to it. So when you come and visit the Georgia Archives and you sit down at one of our patron computers in the search room, you're going to see this reference library portal. This is a handy little list of links to some of the resources that we have available, and this includes some subscription sites that you can use for free, and that includes Ancestry Library Edition, Fold3. We've got access to the Atlanta Constitution for 1868 through 1984. And then several of the other free resources like Family Search, our finding aids, our catalog, Digital Library of Georgia, Galileo, and a few others. But you'll notice down there at the bottom, we have added HeinOnline and newspapers.com library edition. And both of these are courtesy of the R.J. Taylor Jr. Foundation, so you'll see that noted also. So we'll start by talking about HeinOnline. So this gives you access to historical, legal, and legislative resources for all 50 states. We're going to just look at two resources that our patrons use the most, but there is a lot more out there that's available in HeinOnline. The two resources we're going to look at today are state session laws and the Georgia reports, and I'll explain a little bit more about what those are. So the session laws, these are going to be things like the Georgia laws that are passed by the Georgia General Assembly. We also have access to session laws from around the country. I've got the dates listed for some of the southeastern states up there at the top. It also gives you access to federal laws for both US, Canada, and Australia. Now, you might use session laws if you're researching the history of a county or a town, because laws are going to show you when a town was incorporated, how it's setting up the local government, what the boundaries are of that city. Same for the county, it will show you any changes in the county boundary and also when the county was established. If there's changes in the boundary, it goes into details about what exact land will be, taken out of one county and then moved to another county. And I've got examples over here of the incorporation of Braswell in 1895 and boundary change between Baker and Calhoun County in 1877. Now you may also use, especially the early laws, for family history research. You'll find divorces, requests for relief, name changes, and manumissions. And manumissions are freeing of enslaved persons. And I've got an example of that over here. This is an act. It reads, whereas Richard Meriwether and others have petitioned the present legislature, praying that an act may be passed to manumit and make free Lucy Barrett and Betty Barrett, Jim, commonly called Jim Larry, and a mulatto girl named Nancy, late the property of Alexander Kevin. Now again, that's mostly where you're going to find those are going to be the early laws. This law that I read out, that's from 1801. The laws will also give you information about specific legal subjects. So some examples might be if you wanted to know how did somebody get divorced in 1870 in Alabama, you would go to the Alabama session laws to find that out. I've got an example here about the fireworks ban in Georgia that was passed in 1962. It's just the top part, but if you read the whole law, it would give you the specifications about when fireworks were allowed to be bought and sold, and then, you know, when they're prohibited. Okay, so there's a few ways that you can access the laws. Some of those ways are free and online. Georgia Legislative Documents is one that we use a good bit. That gives you access to the laws from 1755 through about 1999. There are some gaps, but it's pretty complete. It is keyword searchable. If you've got a year and page, you can also search that way. It is free online, and probably the easiest way to get to it is go to our website, georgiaarchives.org, click on the research tab, and go to search our collections, and there's a link there. You can also come to our search room and view the published acts and resolutions. We've also got the House and Senate journals shelved with them. That's in the book library. One other way to get, especially the more recent laws, is go to the Georgia General Assembly website. That looks like this. They have the laws from 2001 up to present, and they have some really good search features on their website. You can search by keyword or by bill type or year, and it also lists what committees those laws went through and who introduced them. So we'll do an example. We get questions sometimes about you know, what information was required on certain types of records. So we're going to look at a question, what information was required of those completing an early marriage application in Georgia? So let's talk about marriage applications a little bit first. Marriage applications include more information than what you would find on a license or a certificate. The license and certificate are pretty much just going to list those who were getting married, who married them, and when and where, and that's it. You may notice in other states that you get more information, but in Georgia, that's all you're going to get. Now, marriage applications are a separate document. They were required by a 1924 law. Applications do not exist in Georgia prior to this date. Now, these records are recorded in the county probate court, and they are closed for 75 years. Very few of them are online, and very few are microfilmed. Most are only available at the county probate court. So one strategy when we're doing this type of research is we will go to the Georgia Code, which is sort of a compilation of the laws. We'll find the specific topic that we're interested in. In this case, I have pulled up the section talking about applications for marriages. And then down here at the bottom, it will list the history of that section, and it will give you law citations. So I took a look at this 1927 law that it's citing. And I went and used Georgia Government Publications, or sorry, Georgia Legislative Documents, and pulled up that 1927 law. And I found out that this 27 law is an amending act. Now, the law itself gives us a citation to the law that it is amending, and that is Georgia Law of 1924, and then it gives us a page number. So now that we've got our year and page number, we can do a search in HeinOnline. And I'll show you how that works. So from the library portal, you're going to go to HeinOnline, and you're going to go to the Sessions Law Library. Go to State Sessions, State Session Laws. Go to Georgia, and then we'll put in our year and our page number. And click search. And that will take us to the law that we're interested in, that 1924 law. Now, you could have looked this up in Georgia legislative documents as well, the same as I did for that 1927 law, but that website is a transcription of the published laws. So if you needed to check and make sure that the wording was correct, you might want to look at the HeinOnline version because it is a scan of the published version. And we have run into that where we had to go and check the published version. Sometimes we even have to go back to the original law to make sure that the wording is the same. Now, let's say you didn't have the book and page number. You can also do keyword searching, so I'll show you what that looks like. So once again, you'll go to HeinOnline, and you'll go to the session laws. And I'm going to show you when you do a keyword search, it's going to search all these different states. And all these different years. Okay, so once we've clicked on Georgia and we're going to put in the search term that we're interested in, marriage application, we're going to search. And it's going to bring up everything in Georgia, so you may have to do some filtering or just scroll through. In this case, our 1924 law comes up pretty close to the top. We also get that 1927 law that we were looking at earlier. And when you click on the link, it takes you right to it. And you can go through and read the law and see what the requirements are. Oops. There we go. I have highlighted what information was required that's listed in that law. This comes from that 1924 law. So you get quite a good bit of biographical information about the two people being married. So we will go and look at a marriage application. This is a marriage application for Hall County for two people who were married in 1930. You'll see that a lot of this, the information that was listed in the law is listed here, and it actually cites that up there at the top. It says, with questions and answers as provided by law in Act of 1924, amended 1927. And the people who were getting married have gone through and answered all these questions, including you get parents' names and then where the parents were from. Now the gentleman, he has said that his mother is dead and didn't list her name, but he does give his father's name. And then the bride has listed both of her parents. Now we'll talk about the Georgia reports. Now to get to the Georgia reports, you're going to click on this state reports over here. Now what the Georgia reports are, they are summaries of Georgia Supreme Court cases. So if you're doing research on a Supreme Court case or a case that went up to the Supreme Court, make sure to check the Georgia reports. Not only does it give you a summary, in the later cases, it will give you the case number, and that's important to know later. The Georgia reports available on HeinOnline, they've got from 1846, when the Supreme Court was founded, through 1922. If you need to look at the Georgia reports after 1922, we have them published and available in our search room. So the case that I've pulled out, this is a 1898-1899 case, Central of Georgia versus Ross. Ross sued the Central of Georgia Railway after the train killed his mule. This happened outside of Macon. So there was a justice court trial in which Ross said that his mule was killed at a railroad crossing, and that the animal could have been seen by the engineer. And he also said that no whistle was blown, and that the mule was killed within the city limits of Macon. Now, the engineer testified that He was outside the city limits. He did blow his whistle at the crossing, and that the mule was coming up the track. He was on an embankment, and it was 25 to 35 yards away from the crossing. He didn't blow his whistle because he believed that it would frighten the mule to run onto the tracks, and he thought he could pass the mule, but that wasn't the case. He said that they were going so fast that they didn't have time to stop, and he was backed up by some other, by the engineer that was working on the train with him. Now, in the Justice Court, the company lost, and they were ordered to pay $50 plus cost to Ross, but this case was appealed to the Georgia Supreme Court. So when you find out that the case went to the Georgia Supreme Court, one thing that you can do is go to our website here in the reference library portal and click on the Georgia Supreme Court Cases database. This database will give you some information about the case, when it was filed, when the judgment was, but it also gives you the case number for the cases between 1846 through 1917. The cases after 1917, the case number is published in the Georgia Report, so you don't need the database for the later ones. Now, once you have this case number, you can come to the Georgia Archives and ask us to pull the case file, because we have case files for Supreme Court cases from 1846 all the way up to 1990. So in this case, I went and pulled the case file, and it has copies of documents from the lower court case, including some testimony. And I'm going to see if I can read this testimony out. So this is coming from Mr. Ross, who was testifying about his mule. He said, "I lost a mule in October before last Christmas. He was a black horse mule, and very good mule. I don't know how old he was. Some said he was about 10 years old. I had him about 4 years when he was killed. Judging by the way I have felt since I lost him, he was worth $100 to me. I was making money out of him. He cost me $75 cash. I wouldn't have taken no less than $100 for him when he was killed." So, let's see. Let me go back. Okay. So when the case was appealed to the Supreme Court, there were several points that the justices brought up. One, they objected to testimony that Ross said. He testified that the company, they killed a good many stock out that way. They killed the mules and the cows. It had not been a year since they killed a mule right below where they killed mine. Now, he said this over the objection of the defense, and the higher court said that this prejudiced the jury against the company. They also said that the question of if the mule was killed at a public crossing was not proved. Since those 2 points were made, they said that a new trial should be given. Now, one thing to note about those case files before we move on, they can be very large, especially the more modern ones, but some of the older ones may only be like a small folder. So it really just depends on the case. Okay, so let's switch and talk a little bit about searching in HeinOnline. There is, you can browse by the type of record. So if you wanted to browse the session laws, you could do that. You can also browse the state reports, bar journals, and some of the other resources that are in there. You can browse by some legal subjects. They have some that are sort of grouped together by subject. One in particular that we were interested in was documents concerning the boundaries of the state of Georgia. They have a pretty good search engine. You can keyword search. You can do book and page search like we did. If you've got a year and page number or a year and act number, you can search that way as well. If you do broad keyword searching, you may have to do some filtering because it's going to pull out a lot of different things. So if you were keyword searching in the Georgia reports, you can enter the names of the parties who are involved, but you'll probably get a lot of stuff that's not related to the case. they may be citing it in other cases, for example, so you might need to filter by date. Okay, so we're going to leave HeinOnline and move on to newspapers library edition. So when you come to the archives to do newspaper research, there's a few different resources that we have access to. One is Georgia Historical Newspapers. This is done by the Digital Library of Georgia. This is free online everywhere. I've got the web address there listed. You can also just search Georgia Historical Newspapers and get to it pretty easily. Just look for the link that has Galileo in it. Now, when you're on site at the archives, you can also keyword search the Atlanta Constitution from 1864 to 1986. We also have the newspapers.com library edition, which I'm going to talk a little bit more about. On microfilm, we have both the Journal Constitution and Journal Constitution for those dates listed. And then we've also got a general newspaper microfilm collection that's indexed in a binder in the library. Now, it's important to remember that the newspapers.com library edition is not the same as the personal subscription. You can use newspapers.com library edition on site at the Georgia Archives. You won't be able to use it if you're, just at home. Unless you have a personal subscription. When you're here at the archives, you can save articles to a personal flash drive for free, or you could print for 20 cents a page. Now, the newspapers.com library edition has a couple of good runs of Georgia papers. I've got them listed here. So we've got the Carroll Free Press, Pickens County Progress, Macon Telegraph, Cherokee Phoenix and Indians Advocate, and the West Point News. Now there's some other titles in there, but they have sort of smaller year runs. These were sort of the big ones that I picked up. There's also coverage from around the country, especially I've got the southeastern states highlighted here. They have especially strong coverage in Tennessee, Alabama, and North Carolina. And they have strong coverage in some of the border cities. So we've got Phoenix City papers, Opelika, Eufaula, that are all going to report on West Georgia also. And then for Tennessee, we've got the Chattanooga Daily Times. So we found articles reporting on northwestern Georgia in that paper. And then we've got the Edgefield Advertiser, which reports on a lot of things that happen in Augusta as well. So we'll take a look at some of the examples of notices that we found in some of those border cities. So for the Edgefield Advertiser, I've got a marriage notice here from Augusta. We get the names of the people who are getting married and the father. On the right here, we've got a death notice for Cedartown. It lists the name of the deceased and her husband. It also lists the names of her daughter, sister, and uncle. And that's from the Chattanooga Daily Times, reporting on a Cedartown death. In the Eufaula Daily Times, I've got a notice from Quitman County, Georgia. We've got a man who died in Quitman, and it gives you his exact date of death and the place where he was buried. And because it's 1888, and this is before Georgia was recording death certificates, this could be the only source of information that you find on him. It's possible there's a tombstone also. On the right, we've got a wedding notice. This is a notice about a marriage in Dalton, Georgia. So we get the name of the bride and groom, we get their ages and their parents' names, and we also get where the groom was employed, which was the Crown Cotton Mill. So the newspapers.com library edition, it really opens up what we're able to do for researchers when they come and see us. We can now help people with national and regional coverage of major Georgia events. So Even if there's not titles where we've got Georgia newspapers for that particular location and time period, we can look at some of the regional papers that are reporting on these events. It also helps us answer questions about recent events, and by recent I kind of mean anything past or more recent than 1923, which is when a lot of the coverage from Georgia historical newspapers cuts off. We also have access to major non-Georgia events or things where federal agency records would really probably cover these topics better than we could. Some examples, we have students coming in and they might ask about, D-Day or the sinking of the Titanic. We've had questions about the Atlanta prison farm, the Atlanta Federal Penitentiary, immigration, or things about the U.S. military. Those are all federal records, or would be where you go to federal records to research about those topics. But we can also use the newspapers to answer some of those questions. We've also got resources for Cherokee removal. We get a lot of students asking about that. And one of those newspaper titles that I read out earlier, it was a newspaper that was printed by the Cherokee Nation. So students could get firsthand accounts from the perspective of the Cherokee Nation. We've also got, like I said before, access to those papers where they're documenting people who live near border states or near the state border. And then also we can check on obituaries and marriage notices for people who moved into other states. So we'll go through a few examples. This is a Virginia paper that's reporting on a murder that happened in Macon, the Woolfolk murders. This is sort of a very sensational article that was reprinted from the Atlanta Constitution, but you see here it's being published in Virginia. Here is a Oklahoma paper that is reporting on the 1936 Gainesville tornado. They've published an image of the destruction. Then here is a newspaper that's reporting on D-Day. So we've got, this is from Kentucky, a Kentucky paper. So if students came in and wanted to know about D-Day, before we had access to this, we might sort of struggle to find resources, for, primary sources for them. So the newspaper would now help us answer those questions. And then we've got sort of an outside view of events that are happening in Georgia. This is the Chattanooga Daily Times. They're reporting on the three governors controversy, when 3 different candidates believe that they should have the governor's office after the sitting governor died. We've got access to, this is an Alabama paper, 1962. They're reporting on the Albany movement, and not only reporting on it, this article in particular is written by the president of the Albany movement, William G. Anderson. So you're getting it from his perspective. Students a lot of times are looking for things from the perspective of the people involved in the movement. So they're not just relying on government records or other media coverage at the time. And then we've got much more recent events. This is an Indiana paper that's reporting on the Atlanta Olympics gearing up. Previously, we wouldn't probably have had anything so recent, especially if you're looking for, what the rest of the country was reading about, so that you're getting their perspective on the Olympics. Now we'll talk a little bit about searching in newspapers.com. A lot of the searching is set up for obituary and marriages, so they have genealogy in mind. So when you do a name search for an obituary, it will populate sort of a abstract of the record. And because it's a computer doing it, it may not be perfect. You see that they've got her name listed as Mays Buried. Where they're getting that is Mrs. Mays buried in Georgia. So her actual name is Ella Dudley Mays. According to her obituary, she was born in Washington County, Georgia, We get her exact birth date, marriage date, and we get her husband's name. In this particular case, it's a woman who was, born in Georgia, but then moved to Pittsburgh later in life. And her obituary was printed in the Pittsburgh Courier. Now, the Pittsburgh Courier is important. It was one of the highly circulated African American papers, and we have a publication in our search room downstairs. It's called Early African American Deaths in the Pittsburgh Courier, and a lot of the folks are from the South, including Georgia. I've got a few obituaries here pulled up. We've got the one at the top there. He was a pastor. He was born in Columbia, South Carolina, but he also pastored in Augusta, Georgia, and it lists quite a few of his family members. The lower obituary for Fred Holt, it gives you his date of birth and place of birth, which was 1857 in Macon. It lists his brother's name, William B., and you also get the slave owner's name and the location of his plantation, that it was in Macon. It says that his name was Judge Holt, and you could probably figure out who that was, either through newspaper research, census research, or reading county and city histories. So there may not have been another source of information for this, this particular information that's included in this obituary. So it's pretty important to go through these and look for them when they're available. Okay, so there's a few ways that you can do searching in newspapers.com. You can either browse by the location or you can use the search engine. And like I said, it is geared towards genealogy if you're name searching. We're going to do an example of that. So we've got a family that we have located in the 1940 census. They're living in Opelika in Lee County, Alabama. We've got a mother, Rosa, and her son, Henry Lewis, who's living with her. And they're living with some other family, the Dowdle family. So in this particular case, the family thinks that Henry Lewis died around 1950, and they want to look for an obituary. So I'm going to show you how you could do that. So from the library portal, go to newspapers.com. We're going to put in his name. And we know about when he died, so we're going to put in a date range. And we're going to put in the location where he was living. Okay, now you can filter by results, so we're going to filter by obituaries, since that's what we're interested in. And we get a pretty good hit, looks like, so we'll take a look at that. And you see the computer did a better job this time figuring out his name. So let's compare this obituary with what we saw in the 1940 census. So we've got, when and where he died, that he was born and reared in Opelika, well known throughout the community, passed away Sunday after a few days' illness, and is survived by his mother, Rosa Dowdle. And that matches up with what we're seeing here in the 1940 census. He also died in the place and at about the right date, so that confirms that we're talking about the same guy. Okay, now I'm going to show you how you might browse by location. And you might do this if you were just interested in reading, in what the newspaper was writing about in, say, a specific time and place. For our example, we're going to look at West Point, Georgia in the 1930s. So from that main page, you can go to Find by Location. And go to Georgia, West Point. You can choose your year and then your month. And if you click on those specific dates, you'll get a little preview of what the paper will look like. Then just click on the page you're interested in. And the scans are really pretty good. You can scroll around, zoom in if you need to. And we see that there's a cartoon about winter coming and a new school building. You can advance by hitting the little arrow down at the bottom. So those are some of the ways that you can search in newspapers.com. There's a good bit of functionality. You can, save, you can clip. If you've got a personal ancestry subscription, you can save to that. You can print from our computers onto paper for 20 cents a page, or like I said, you can bring a flash drive and save to that for free. So if anybody has any questions about HeinOnline or newspapers.com, I can answer those now.
Okay. Does the Georgia Archives have many of the marriage applications on microfilm?
No. In most cases, we do not have marriage applications at all. The one that I showed you from Hall County, we happened to have them filmed, but they were filmed as part of a marriage records collection. They were just filmed with the certificates. So that was sort of an exception. In almost all cases, you need to go to the probate court in order to access those.
Okay, for the Georgia Supreme Court cases online, can those be accessed from home, or would someone have to come into the archives?
You may be able to find the Georgia reports online, especially for the recent years. But if you're talking about the case files themselves, those are not scanned. You would need to come into the archives to pull those. And as always, if you know that you've got a specific case that you want to have pulled and you know when you're going to come, you can call us or write into our Ask an Archivist and let us know what you want when you're coming, and we can pull it ahead of time for you. Those case files they can be very rich in information. So if you're researching a specific case, make sure to take a look at that case file.
Can we save newspaper articles on a flash drive or email the article to our home email address using newspapers.com?
You can for sure save it to a flash drive. As far as emailing it to yourself, I think you can. I don't know that it's built in, but you could log into your webmail and then add it as an attachment and email it to yourself. You could do that.
If we were to come in to use HeinOnline, can the reference archivist help assist?
Yes. Yeah, anybody in the search room that's at the desk there can help you using HeinOnline. We're a little bit new to it as well, so we're learning all that it has to offer. But we've been using it for a few months, and we really like having access to all of those things.
Okay, I don't see any other questions.
Okay. I'll turn it over to Penny.
Yeah. Thank you, Allison. That was really, really good. It was a really informative presentation. If you want to review some of the things that Allison has gone over in her presentation, either on HeinOnline or newspapers.com, this will be available on our YouTube channel. So you're thinking, what was that she was talking about? Let me go back and see how to use that. You can do that. This is wonderful. You go on our YouTube channel. And now for some information on our upcoming events. On Saturday, April the 2nd, is our free virtual symposium, Georgia's Judiciary and Courts Through the Years. To learn more about this very interesting symposium or to register, please go to our website, www.georgia.gov. georgiaarchives.org. That's georgiaarchives.org. And then look under announcements. And just like you did for here, register, and you will be sent an email with a link to the symposium. Now, we are not going to have a virtual Teams webinar Lunch and Learn for April. However, the presentation will be pre-recorded and available once again on our YouTube channel at noon, Friday, April the 8th. And there are all sorts of wonderful presentations you can look at. Now, the topic for April is how to become a book detective, the analysis of rare and historic books by Joy Ellen Williams, Special Collections Curator, Museums, Archives, and Rare Books from Kennesaw State University. And once again, thank you for joining us.